Hello and welcome to this episode of the Synthetic Native Podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Eugene Capon.
Capon.
Am I saying your name?
Capon.
Okay. I knew I was going to mess that up. So, Eugene, just right off the bat, can you just explain some of your credentials for the viewers?
So I'm what's known as a VR evangelist. It means I go around the area to different companies or conventions or panels or events, and I talk about the future of technology specifically for virtual reality, most notably for the social space.
Okay, that's awesome. I have to imagine that is a very much an emergent career choice, right? Like, there's not a whole lot of VR evangelists out there.
There's enough to there's not enough to be noticed right now, but I often talk about a group of papers I wrote that I'm turning into an ebook and I'm going to be releasing very soon called VR and Cat Gifts, and I talk about the rise of the VR internet personality. That's going to happen.
So you can go ahead and just talk a little bit about that then.
Yeah. So one of the talks I like to give is called VR and Cat Gifts. And basically what it is I start laying out what the timeline plan for the replacement of the internet to start to turn into the metaverse. And because of that, we'll end up getting VR personalities rise up out of it the same way we ended up getting professional YouTubers, or we got celebrities out of MySpace and Twitter, and even before that with certain vlogs that were taking off.
Right.
Yeah.
Are these people that maybe my head's in the totally wrong space? I haven't really given a lot of thought to this, but are these people famous through their avatars? Like, do I not think of PewDiePie? Do I think of PewDiePie's like 3D avatar?
So I definitely lay it out into 3 different categories. One I call the filmmaker, which is somebody who probably has a background in VFX, filmmaking, 360 video, maybe animation, that sort of thing. And they're basically vlogging their lives, or at least doing some sort of documentation in 360 video, which is already adopted by things like Facebook and YouTube. And then we have the person who is just using what's found around them. So you'll get the people who are like, hey, I'm going to go start a show in high fidelity, or I'm going to go and start a show in Altspace, rest in peace as of tomorrow. And then you have what's called the designer, which is the 3rd category. And that's the person who can go ahead and create the world and their platform and their show from the ground up. They might be proficient in Unity or Unreal, and they can code and model and create everything from the ground up.
It's interesting. I'm trying to think of like what something else that it's analogous to, like a VR personality. Is that analogous to a YouTube personality? Or
I would say it's very, very close.
Okay.
I definitely think there's a little bit more work that goes into the process. Having worked at a YouTube consulting company, I got to know some of the biggest YouTubers in Washington, and they are all very hustle, hard work. Let's get into it, and to be able to push out the amount of content to keep themselves sustainable, especially after Adpocalypse, is absolutely amazing. I recently worked with a YouTuber by the name of Onision over the last 2 weeks. He's more of an OG YouTuber, and I did a sketch with him where he was killing off a lot of the characters for his YouTube channel as he was prepping to close down the YouTube channel, start a new YouTube channel. And his filming technique was one take, that's not good, let's do it again, 2 takes, that's perfect, let's go. And we're able to do like something that would probably take me 3-4 times longer very quickly. And that just comes from like experience and having done that for so long.
So they've just got their craft down. So for the people out there that think that, it's kind of off topic from XR, but for the people out there that think that YouTubers, don't do anything, don't have real jobs, they're wrong.
No, yeah.
Very much wrong.
Those people are filmmakers.
Yeah.
In the truest sense, because even if they're not, doing sketches all the time, even with like vloggers, those are the casual documentary filmmaker is what I like to call them. They're documenting their life, they're presenting a narrative, they're cutting out things that they don't want the public to see and presenting a product at the end of the day, just like a documentary filmmaker would.
Right. So is it fair to say you still do consulting with YouTube people then?
Not as much. I've kind of taken this back page to doing VR evangelism. So I'm doing, like, I'll still take the commercial job or the VFX motion design job, but the majority of the stuff I've been doing the last year has been VR related.
Okay, so the reason I was asking was I was going to ask if you have tried to turn any YouTube folks onto VR a little bit, maybe get some early adoption from some big name.
Oh, absolutely. Cool. One of the most recent projects I did was with a YouTuber by the name of Barnacules Nerdgasm. He has about 900,000 YouTube subscribers, and him, myself, Adrian Ladelia, we built a experience called Relax VR, and we basically turned a $40,000 deprivation saltwater tank into a VR experience by using the water in the float tank as a haptic feedback device. And basically, so basically you lay down in this pool of salt water. It's not really salt; it's some sort of mineral. But you're floating in this water, and you put on this headset. And we ran an MVP video, a minimal viable product, which is just like a 360 video. And if you look down, you can see your body just kind of floating in the water. We animated that in, and we made it so you were like floating in space, and you see like the moon and stars and the earth, and they kind of circle around you, and it's just there's this very, very relaxing music attached to this 10-minute experience. And we really built it because, well, we were like, hey, what would be an amazing feedback device that is somewhat readily available, so we don't have to go out and create it? And we're like, well, Jerry, you just did a video in a saltwater tank, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. He goes, that would make a great way to use VR inside of it, and because not everybody inside of a saltwater tank actually, blacks out. People, are often stuck with their mind. It's a select few, but there's like a big enough margin that this could actually be a product. So we, spent a month and a half and we built it in our spare time, and we got to go down to this place in Bellevue, I believe it was, and we got to try out our theory, and yeah, sure enough, it worked.
That's cool. So this is for people who are actually in a saltwater. There's actually, it's like an isolation tank.
Yeah, isolation tank or deprivation tank.
So this is for people who are in a sensory deprivation tank, and they want to be even more, I guess, deprived. No.
So often enough, when you're in a saltwater deprivation tank or a something of that nature, usually your mind kind of goes blank. You start to hallucinate a little bit. But there's always people who like stay conscious, and they're like, I need visuals to relax. This isn't working for me.
Okay.
Like I want to relax in the same way that everybody else is, but it's just not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we figured this would be a great way to be like, okay, now you have a visual, now you have an audio sensory device working with what the rest of your body is feeling.
Okay.
And when you're floating there, the water starts to disappear on you a little bit, and you actually feel like you're floating. And then now we're creating a more in-depth experience than just
that's really cool
in the saltwater tank.
Yeah, that's so. Meditation is very, a big thing. Always, but especially it's become more mainstream. And I was just thinking about how some people would think, the purists probably wouldn't like that, because it's almost like it's just distracting you more. Like, you're not supposed to be plugged in while you're in the sensory deprivation chamber.
I don't know about that. I mean, there are companies like...
I'm not saying I agree with that.
There are companies out there who are specifically working on extra devices to help immerse you even more than just visually or audibly.
Did you run into challenges with trying to deal with the water that's in the tank?
I did. If you watch the video, it actually goes. I'm the first one that goes into this saltwater tank. And it's
is there a video like on YouTube?
Yeah, it has like 60,000 views right now, I think.
Okay, I'll go ahead and throw that in the description.
Yeah, it's on Barnacle Nerdgasm's YouTube channel. I'll throw you a link when we get off. But yeah, so like I was in Texas for a business trip like the week before, and we had floated down this river, and the rocks had kind of cut up my feet and stuff.
Yeah.
And if you have like the slightest opening in your skin anywhere, you're basically letting an acid into your skin, and it burns. Mm-hmm. And when I first put my feet in, they actually cut it, but I freaked out a little bit, and I just started like this very loud scream, and I went, "Demons are raping my feet." Then they were like, "You gotta say something cleaner." I was like, "Mother Teresa."
So that's funny. Were you in San Marcos in Texas?
No, I was in Austin.
Just Austin. Okay.
I was in Austin, floating down one of the rivers there. One of the guys for the that flew us down, me and Andrew Mestis from my company Enzoverse. We were down there for kind of a meet and greet interview sort of deal.
Okay, so I was thinking of South by Southwest Interactive, which I've never been to. I've only been to the music portion. I'm guessing that they probably had some pretty cool VR stuff there, but I haven't caught any of it. So that's interesting. So Enzoverse is your company?
Ensoverse.
Ensoverse, okay.
Enso.
Enso.
Yeah, like the Buddhist drawing.
The little circle thing. Yeah. Ensoverse. So are you basically VR evangelist at Ensoverse? Is that what you're
Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders.
Okay.
Me and Ryan, and Andrew. The four of us actually met at a Seattle hackathon, and in 2.5 days we built our own social network, VR social network.
Okay.
And
so talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about social networking in VR, and how far away you think it is before we get maybe more adoption of that sort of technology.
Okay. So I definitely think social VR is here. It's just not. I believe it is on track. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just a fad," or "It's not catching on," or the adoption rate isn't fast enough yet. And that's where I have to say, well, no, you're wrong, because anytime we have a new technology like this, we have a 10-year adoption rate. I mean, it felt true for TV, it felt true for the radio and the internet. I mean, there were people who said electricity is going to be a fad, it'll never catch on. Electricity. And, now we can't perceive in this country that, electricity isn't a part of our lives. I mean, even there are people who go like camping and they can't be away from a currant bush for the life of them.
Right. Yeah, I'm reminded of the physics professor. I think he was some sort of professor, and his article goes viral every now and then, and it's about, written in 1995, and it's like, you'll never read a book through a computer, you'll never learn like in a class, like basically making all these predictions that are completely wrong. He couldn't have been more wrong if he was writing for The Onion this year. So I'm guessing that, we're going to see, I hope, and you're obviously, an evangelist. I hope we see a lot more VR social spaces, but we do have, I guess, some negative evidence to the contrary with the closing of AltSpace VR. Or it's just a piece of negative signal, I guess. I don't know exactly what happened with AltSpace VR. Maybe you can fill in some of the blanks.
Yeah, so I actually had a talk show on AltSpace. I co-hosted Glitched, which was one of their 16 big channels. And some of the other channels were like Josh, which was like Sarah Silverman, Michael Cera, Tim and Eric, Machinima,
Reggie Watts.
Reggie Watts, the dude who created Rick and Morty, Justin Roiland. Yeah, there were some big, heavy hitters running different shows on this platform. And what looks like happened was they hit into financial trouble because of a patent troll.
Ooh.
Yeah. And patent trolls are basically the devil.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, this could happen. I better patent that this possible idea without doing any more work down the line for it. And if something's kind of in the ballpark, they'll be like, lawsuit, I'm gonna win. And they're like, well, we can't fight this. We just spent $16 million developing this platform, and we don't have enough backers into it to keep it alive. So they had to unfortunately close it down, which was very sad for Topher and I, who Topher's my co-host. And we
that's awful.
Yeah, we were scheduled. Our most recent show was supposed to be the day that they made the announcement that AltSpace was closing in 1 week. And we went back after we sent everything for the next 2 episodes, like to get it in. Our guests were booked. All of our pre-work was done. We were really excited to have Dr. Evie Powell come on and talk about...
I've talked to her before.
Yeah. The newest game she was releasing. And then we had Cuba VR, who was going to be our August guest. We did the show. We were doing the show once a month, and we got like 5-6 episodes in before AltSpace had to close down. Mm-hmm. But we noticed something was up when they were like, "Hey, we think we should hold off on scheduling this. We can't tell you why, but we'll talk to you very, very soon, as soon as we can." And I turned to Topher and I went, "Well, there's one of two things that's going to happen. It's either looking to cancel our show, which we they were basically supporting that show anyway, so that would have been completely fair to them. Maybe we weren't like hitting numbers they had hoped or something. Or two, they were going to close down." And I was like, I think they're going to close down. And sure enough, the next day they made that announcement.
Gosh, that really sucks. Is there any silver lining to that story, or is it just sad day for everyone?
It's a sad day. I mean, a lot of people are losing their jobs over at AltSpace, and it's incredibly saddening.
Yeah, and without knowing the details around sort of the legal troubles, it's not even clear. I don't know how much is released, but it's probably not even clear exactly how you would avoid it. It's, the next company that comes around and tries to do something similar. So that really sucks. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is for creating that show? Because I thought maybe you were just doing almost like a live panel with your co-host and whoever else and in VR, but is it different than that? Is it actually recorded and then broadcast?
No. So it's a live show. And basically the process was, you can actually find episodes, past episodes that we did on my YouTube channel, Capon Design TV. We have a whole playlist up until where we had Barnacle Nerdgasm on. And it was an interesting process of how we actually got there. It was being a VR evangelist, I need to stay up to date on people who are in this community who are doing things, who are creating new technologies. And I ended up going through everybody at Altspace that I could find and followed each one of their Twitter accounts. And, I had just been verified, my Twitter account, as a VR personality. So I have that little blue celebrity check mark on it. And I followed...
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And I followed a gentleman by the name of Sam, who was the community coordinator in charge of broadcasting over at Altspace. And he's like, hey, I noticed you actually have an audience. We need to, fill some shows. Would you be interested in coming on and producing a show? And I was like, actually, I was just talking about this at Eastside VR about how internet personalities are going to be a thing for VR. And this is very much like a solid way to test that hypothesis. And it worked. I mean, we were able to produce, 6 episodes. We were slotted for 15 if Altspace had been shut down. And I went to Topher Welsh, who is in charge of the After Effects Seattle group over at Adobe. And him and I had, been friends for a long time. We'd gone to Comic-Con together. And, we'd done a bunch of really cool things together. It was like, hey, you're a lively, energetic person. I'm very toned down, but I can, make jokes when I need to. And we would be a great couple of co-hosts because, you have both sides of that equation. And we can start bringing on VR personalities or people who are making games or releasing things or people who are working on really, really cool stuff to talk about and basically give people a platform to talk about VR things that they're working on to the general public. And we were building that community around this talk show. So it would be Topher and I, we would, start the show like, hey, everybody, welcome to Altspace. Welcome to Glitched, blah, blah, blah. Do all the social media stuff. Take a selfie in Altspace and we'll send you a poster, an autographed VR poster. And then we would, go through the list of questions just like you're doing with me for your podcast. And we would have that conversation like, hey, why did you choose to go with PlayStation VR over Vive and Oculus? Or, hey, what was the process to get your stuff onto Steam like? And, we'd try to mix it up every single time so we wouldn't end up with the same answers from every single guest. So there did require to be a couple of hours of back research, set out questions, and then I would come to the CoMotion Labs here at the University of Washington to, book out a room and put it on an HTC Vive and, jump in, and Topher would be at his house. And so you're able to put together a talk show with a live audience while everybody is in a different location.
That's super cool. So is it published also just audio across all the traditional podcast mediums, or is it really just VR native, Altspace native?
So what was happening was we originally thought, hey, this could be a podcast, and the producers over at Altspace were like, no, you guys have a talk show. That's actually what you guys have, especially with the live audience, and you guys have the stage that you guys stole from Reggie Watts. And they eventually brought in cameras, digital cameras that had operators behind them to record different views of us doing the show. And the show was actually split up into 2 mirrors. One that would be just us, and we couldn't see the audience, but we could see the emojis coming up. And the mirror that actually had the audience, and then they could see us. So they could be informed, but they couldn't yell things out at us where, somebody might lose their train of thought or somebody might get distracted. And it just, the first couple of episodes were very, very much trial and error, and we were very quick to learn from what worked and what didn't.
Right. Yeah, that sounds super interesting. I am excited to go and check some of those out. You said you have some on your channel, regardless?
I do.
Okay, cool. I'm guessing you miss out on something when you're viewing it through a YouTube video. But other than the fact that you're literally not in a headset getting the effect, I'm guessing that being in the world of Altspace VR affords some other benefits.
Oh, absolutely. It's because you're actually part of that process. I mean, when you get into a YouTube video that's been pre-recorded, you're not able to raise your hand and be like, "Hey, person I've been following online that has never responded to my tweets ever in their life. I'm suddenly in front of you, and I have a way to connect to this person." Mm-hmm. And with YouTube, you just don't have that unless you're live streaming, and you don't have VR live streaming with avatars right now.
Yeah, so it sounds really cool. Sad that that's going away. Are there any other platforms where people can do something similar right now?
Yeah, there's Be Real, there's Pluto VR, there's VR Chat, and then there's High Fidelity. And then I haven't had a chance to check out Facebook Spaces yet, but I hear good things. Right now we're in the process of deciding what to do with the show, or if we want to do something with the show. We might try to take it over to Facebook or VR Chat, or we might just close it down, or we might just turn it into a podcast like our original thought was.
So do you think that there's any inklings, I haven't heard anything, maybe you have, of YouTube trying to really enter the... I know they allow like sort of 360 videos and things like that, but to genuinely try to compete in sort of a more VR native way?
It'll be interesting because I can definitely see that on the horizon as this entire genre of entertainment continues to grow. I mean, YouTube is owned by Google. Google owns the Daydream and the Google Pixel. And, that technology is always going to be continue to grow. So I'm really interested to see what Google is going to release just in terms of VR or AR over the next year.
So one number that gets thrown around a lot by sort of VR evangelist type people or articles or just some data that I hear a lot is the massive uptick in headsets sold supposedly between now and I believe the number is maybe it's 2020 or 2022. Obviously, you can pick any of those years and the number is supposed to go up. So sort of related to that and this idea of people entering the space, where is the money at in VR?
The money right now is definitely in hardware, and that's because we're still at the early stages of that 10-year adoption rate that I talked about earlier. So the money right now is definitely in hardware. Eventually, software and gameplay will catch up. And, right now, software companies are having to invest, I should say, free content right now to keep the hardware sales up. And eventually, we will have that shift where enough people have headsets that a AAA game can come out for VR, say like Doom or Fallout. I know those are coming out as VR experiences, but they had to be standardized into normal gameplay first, just to have all those assets and the building blocks, and then they had to invest time into making the switch over to VR. And say there's 100,000 people with headsets that are willing to buy that game. I mean, that's what you're banking on right now, that enough of that audience is willing to go, hey, Doom looks really cool in VR. I'm going to buy it for $60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I should rephrase it. I was thinking more content, but yeah, right. So obviously the devices are a big thing, and they're also kind of it's that kind of bounds your market, right? Like you need people to invest in the hardware. So right off the bat, people have to buy that. But in terms of VR content, once I have a headset, gaming is obvious, and so I guess social
spaces for now should be free. Right. But I guess if you're talking about like 360 video content, Steam is starting to allow, is planning, if they haven't already done this, is planning to allow 360 video content to be rented on Steam.
Yeah.
And actually, my film Journey. I don't know if we covered this yet.
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah. Is that's the one that was at the Seattle International Film Festival?
Yeah, it was. So I originally built I built Journey VR for Seattle Fashion Week. I was like, hey, I want to take a month out of my life and build this experience because, I want a VR film under my name. And this film kind of took off on its own, which is great. It became a staff pick by both Adobe and Veer. And then it was an official selection at SIFF. And then Steam offered me distribution on their platform for rentals.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your process for creating Journey?
Oh, yeah. So Journey is 100% made in After Effects.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Which was kind of unheard of up until like the last year. And what I did was I managed to combine a couple of plugins specifically for After Effects. And those plugins are Skybox from a company called Metal that just got bought by Adobe, actually. Chris Babodis is software. And I think he has a job there now. And then Video Copilot's Element 3D. And I was able to use Cinema 4D and Blender and a bunch of other programs to build assets, bring them into Element 3D, build out massive structures as I needed, and then I was able to animate just natively inside of After Effects, and then take that footage, convert it over to a ectorectangular map, and produce it into a series of PNG sequences. And then stitch those together in Adobe Premiere, and then send it over to my music guy, Adrian Ladelia.
Shout out to Adrian Ladelia,
Shout
the
out
music guy.
So Adrian Ladelia has been the composer I've worked with for the past 5-6 years.
Yeah.
We met at AFK Tavern a long time ago. He was the only other guy who didn't look like a standout gamer.
What is AFK Tavern? That sounds interesting.
So it's away from Keyboard Tavern.
Right.
And it's over in Everett, Washington, and it's just like a gaming restaurant and bar.
Wow, I need to make it up to Everett. That sounds awesome.
You should. And all the stuff there are like geek themed. So you have like the Doctor shots, Doctor 1 through 10.
Right.
Or you have Lom Lom milk, or you have the One Ring Burger.
Like chocobo eggs. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. So running out of time, kind of, but I have a couple more questions for you. So here's just another softball one. Just what are you most excited about on the horizon for VR?
Man, that actually is a big question for me.
Yeah.
You said softball, then you threw that at me.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Like I can kind of tell that VR arcades are going to be more popular soon.
Ooh.
I'm starting to see hints of it, and I'm hoping that we'll get to the point, kind of like how China has adopted it.
Yep.
And I'll at the end of next month I'll have that comparison. I'm going to China just to with the girlfriend. We're going to China. That's actually where she's from. And while we're there, we're going to go to a bunch of VR arcades and kind of film there and stuff. It'll be fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just had some friends move to Beijing, so maybe I'll go there too. Yeah, I've heard about the Chinese venture into VR arcades. I also heard that maybe it's not really that profitable yet. But what have you heard about it? Any more specifics?
I heard they have like 2,000 arcades all over China, is what I heard. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what I heard. And a couple of people have sent me like, hey, there's a VR arcade game that you can jump into at, I think it was the Alderwood Mall. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then like Portal, which is a VR arcade, opened up here around Seattle. So I need to go check that out as well. So I'm starting to see that maybe VR arcades are going to become a thing until the price of VR headsets actually come down enough. Kind of like the way that arcades in the 70s were big things, and then like home entertainment centers offered like NESs and Game Boys and stuff in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a tangential question, but so if I'm somebody aspiring to be a VR creator, whether that's an engineer or designer, and I want to sort of geographically optimize myself to be around the most VR talent, would you say Seattle, where we're currently talking or based, is one of the better places to be?
Seattle is definitely one of the better places to be in terms of VR. Some of the other places I would recommend is like Silicon Valley in California, New York, or even Vancouver, BC in Canada.
Okay.
Maybe Toronto, Canada.
Anywhere cutting edge sort of technology is happening.
Yeah, anything with a big like tech bubble, I would say, is probably a good place to do it. But for me, Seattle is home, and I want this community here to continue to grow, and hopefully other big VR players will start making Seattle their home as well.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying the local meetups. Shout out to the Seattle VR meetup. Shout out to New Tech Northwest, which does some VR related stuff sometimes. I was going to ask you if you knew about Pixvana, a local startup.
I do. I'm working with them to try to get my my VR film onto Steam.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really cool. Have you enjoyed using their product, or?
So far, it's very easy to use, very easy to navigate, and I'm hoping once it gets my film all the way through the process and up on Steam, I'll be able to say, hey, this was the main product I used to get it up there.
That's awesome. So one last question for you. What is the biggest sort of misconception you run into about VR that people have?
VR is a fad. I do not believe VR is a fad. And it's not just because, I quit my job to pursue it, and so I really need it to work out. It's the first time I ever tried VR, it was outside of the dock in Seattle, over by the Adobe campus. And a gentleman by the name of Lou Ward had one of the first Gear VRs, and he had already started a VR project in Unity. And he basically made the Iron Giant go ahead and pick you up and then walk. And I had never seen that before. And there's a few moments in my life where I'm like, this is what's going to change everything. I felt that way when I saw the internet for the first time. I felt that way when I saw YouTube for the first time. And then I felt it when I tried that experience. I think the DK1 for Oculus was just getting ready to launch, so nobody had really experienced the big headsets yet. And I knew right then and there, this is something that is worthy of my time, and I want to help navigate to its success.
Yeah. It's awesome to hear somebody so eloquently summarize their passion for VR. Eugene, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
What is your where can people reach you and find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Capon Design. I have a YouTube channel that people can go to learn how to make VR content the same way I made my film Journey, which is YouTube/Capon Design TV, CAPON. That's how you spell my last name. And, I'm on Veer and a bunch of other places. And, if you just type in my name, the first 3 pages of Google is all me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for being on, Eugene. We'll talk to you soon.
It was my pleasure.